Story 1. I passed a man once on the streets in broad daylight with his girlfriend. He stopped me and gave me €500 in cash to hold his beer while he was getting a favor. That was quite decadent. Story 2. I had Italian porcelain floors installed in my garage. I have always wanted a custom garage, and after 48 years, I finally have it. Story 3. My buddy's wedding cocktail hour had a sushi station, fresh pasta station, prime rib, whole pig, whole lamb, a 12 by 12 cheese and cracker display, martini ice luge, and I am sure there were other items. And that was just the cocktail hour. Story 4. I once went to a strip club that had a balcony area on the second floor. I saw money raining down, and I looked up to see an older gentleman throwing money. He must have had close to $5,000 in $1 bills because he had 3 other strippers with him, each with a huge stack of $1 bills, helping him make it rain down on the stage below. He and the ladies finished throwing their stacks and then retreated into a private room as a few more women joined them. About an hour later, some emergency medical technicians and a few police officers came in and headed up to the private room. 30 minutes later, they rolled the old man out on a stretcher. Story 5. A very wealthy friend threw a wedding with around 300 people. When you got home, you were delivered a small replica of their wedding cake, a case of wine from their winery, and a week-long invitation to use one of the guest homes at their vacation property. Story 6. I managed to get a first-class ticket on Emirates about 10 years ago with my old work. They had an excess of air miles from a previous deal that was paid in points, which were set to expire, so they let everyone use them up. The lounge in Dubai had everything. I had to wait 1.5 hours there. There were all ranges of wines, champagne, and fancy meals. I had some fresh oysters, some lobster, and some Wagyu steak. It was the best meal I have ever had in my life. Each course was paired with a matching wine. There were some people you could tell were regulars, and they were just used to all of this like they experience it every day. Then there was more of the same on the plane itself. So much delicious food. You had your own room on the plane with a bathrobe and slippers. The attendant came and made my bed for me. Story 7. My aunt and uncle are yacht captains. They would get flown in, take command of some wealthy individual's yacht, pilot it, serve as cook and waitstaff, clean the boat, and so on. Most weeks they just sat on these expensive boats doing nothing, earning thousands of dollars. There are many troubling stories of disconnected wealth. But the one I always think about is the wife of one of these captains of industry who spent 30,000 United States dollars on a pack of 6 throw pillows and didn't like them. So, she had the crew throw them out and bought another set costing 30,000 more. She insisted they be thrown out rather than the crew taking them because they were worried that if the designer saw them being resold, she would be cut off. Story 8. My friend married a woman whose father is a mining magnate. Their wedding had a happy hour, hors d'oeuvres, a full catered dinner, and then an open bar with liquor shots. In slightly less than an hour, there were men vomiting off the outdoor balcony, women crying in the restroom, older guests dancing enthusiastically on the dance floor, and people making incoherent speeches whenever they could grab the microphone, while the DJ wasn't looking or fending off intoxicated guests making confusing requests. It was amazing. Story 9. Coming home to my grandparents-in-law for the first time. He is the owner of a workwear business in Iceland and is very wealthy. I felt like if I even accidentally breathed in the wrong direction, I would have to sell both of my kidneys because all of their furniture and decorations were probably worth more than my entire body on the black market. Story 10. I was walking downtown to run an errand early on a Saturday afternoon last spring, and I immediately saw a couple of girls vomiting together behind my building's dumpster and noticed their end-of-school bar crawl t-shirts. Then, half a block further, I saw a girl in the same t-shirt squatting and holding onto a parking meter, looking like she was struggling not to fall while urinating right between the sidewalk and street. When I hit the main road, there were hordes of them wearing the bar crawl t-shirts. I passed a huge parking lot of kids hanging out, playing beer pong, and blasting music. Most of them had gallon water jugs of mixer and were drinking them out in the open. This was around 2 p.m. I saw a couple more people urinating in the open and more throwing up. I also saw a girl passed out, completely asleep on the sidewalk, just as an ambulance pulled up. When she realized, She tried to run but didn't get very far. After reading other comments, I am now wondering which definition of decadent you meant when asking this. Story 11. I was dating a woman and we were breaking up mutually. She was moving to Switzerland from Southern California, and honestly, the relationship just wasn't there for either of us. She bought a giant rug that cost $4,300 a week before she moved. I still don't know why. Her sister ended up keeping it and later sold it for $4,100. One of the oddest purchases, especially because I never inquired about what kind of rug it was. In one conversation, I did ask her, "Why did you buy this? You're leaving in a week." And her response was something like, "I wanted to see what it looked like in a house she was moving out of." Story 12. In China, we offered a set menu called a God's Feast. It was served on a huge board larger than a table, carried by 4 staff members in traditional Chinese costumes, who walked toward us with the food on their shoulders. In the background, gongs and traditional instruments were being played. I was so embarrassed that I wanted to hide like an ostrich. Story 13. We were burglarized the day we moved in. Upon returning from a short trip to return the moving truck, one of the criminals tried to jump over my backyard fence, and his pants got stuck. He lost and left his pants. I pursued him. He tossed my Nintendo Switch. I didn't realize he also had a spare key for our car. He came back and stole it. It was totaled in the police chase. The police never recovered any of the other stolen items. They didn't pursue the other teenagers. They didn't come back to take fingerprints on the window that they left. There were more than 7 teenagers that burglarized us. They messed with our belongings in the house. The teenager that got in trouble for stealing our car received community service and a $200 restitution that he doesn't have to pay. 2 other girls that were there and caught came back to my house a week or so later asking for their purse that they left during the burglary. Neither had their parents or guardians with them. I told them we gave it to the police, and she couldn't believe that because of how expensive the purse was and how inconvenient it was for her to try and get it back. Her guardians came back to our house. They didn't even realize that the teenagers had an upcoming court date. The rest of them got away without any consequences, taking hundreds of dollars of electronics. Had I not recovered the Xbox from the stolen car after it was totaled and the Nintendo Switch during the pursuit, it would have been well over $1,500, plus the $35,000 car. They messed with our bed. They messed with our belongings in the kitchen and fridge. Who knows what stupid things they did to our old Chihuahua. We get a couple of sassy girls that walk by every once in a while and say some nonsense to me. What did I do? Edit. Decadent. Characterized by or reflecting a state of moral or cultural decline. Story 14. The president of a company I once worked for was chauffeured to work in a Mercedes every day. He lived in a luxury apartment just 1 block away from the office. Every year, he received a brand new Mercedes to be chauffeured in. Story 15. This is probably different from most responses, and it is going to sound judgmental, but I do not mean it to be. I am a mission worker in Sierra Leone. In American grocery stores, I sometimes see refrigerators with raw meat to make food for dogs. My children in Sierra Leone eat once a day. I have seen how they cheer and crowd for the school lunch that I can afford twice weekly. The only days of the week they eat twice. It is just rice and cassava leaves. They eat meat less than weekly. I walk past those refrigerators, and I always think about how American dogs eat better than human children in much of the world. I have seen kids bicker over a spoonful of rice. They would literally fight for a chance to eat our dog food. I am not condemning people for spending their money how they choose. I am just saying many Americans have absolutely zero awareness of their staggering decadence from a global perspective. Story 16. I participated in a group event with over 80 people after Burning Man in San Francisco about 20 years ago. There was a lot of enjoyable substances, good wine, and dancing. Story 17. Well, my parents took my brother, his partner, and me and mine on a cruise with them as a gift. And the last day before we went home was spent on a private island owned by the cruise line. We had a private cabana with a butler and as much food and drink as we wanted, a private beach, and live music. If your hand was empty, a smiling employee would be on you in half a minute asking if you wanted a refill. I even saw someone literally carried back to the ship because they had drunk too much. And the workers smiled and said, "Yes, that's included." When we joked with them, we were separated from the rest of the passengers by a literal line of hedges, gate guards, and a moat, so there were a couple thousand people just out of sight of the 200 to 300 of us in the luxury area. There was a golden gate that opened with choral music when your 20-person golf cart went through it. My brother and I, along with our partners, felt kind of dirty afterward because it was nice and an amazing experience I would never be able to afford on my own. However, it felt very exploitative and unnecessary. It seemed all faux rich and the idea of luxury, but it was skin deep, and under the surface, it was cheapest done fastest and underpaid workers on a beautiful tropical island devastated by heavy machinery. The whole island, which was about 20 miles long, was owned by the cruise line. You could see the excavator teeth in the coral, and sand was brought in while the torn-up scrub jungle was hidden by fences and artificial turf. The tidal pools and snorkeling area had fish feeders hidden in the rocks to attract fish when people were on the island. It screamed artificial finery, with literal whitewashed fences and buildings, all while destroying something that was probably beautiful on its own. Drinking on that beach was likely a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but it's not something I'm really eager to repeat. I fully recognize how lucky and privileged it was that we were able to go, especially on top of a week-long cruise, and how relatively few people get to experience that. The life opportunities I've been afforded are truly amazing, but I can also see the decadent, potentially wasteful, and destructive side of things. Story 18. I once got invited to a party where everyone was supposed to bring their own alcohol. There were about 200 people invited, and they kept emptying their drinks into a 150-gallon water tank with a spigot. Who knows what ended up in there? But nobody was sober by the end of the night, especially yours truly. Story 19. I worked in food and beverage at a high-end resort. Some of the corporate events were truly lavish, especially in contrast to moving into government afterward, where we must self-fund all of our events. The fact that companies are willing to pay thousands of dollars per person sometimes for food and beverage for hundreds of people is simply mind-boggling. Story 20 years ago, I attended a technology corporation-sponsored conference. The entertainment for the night was that they rented out Universal Islands of Adventure in Orlando, forced the park to close early, and had the entire park open, with rides available for several hours that night. The walkways of the park were filled with dessert tables, and they had open bar carts at the end of each ride. Forgive the image quality. I had partaken in many of the free drinks. Story 21. I once made a pizza burger by cooking 2 whole large pizzas and making a burger patty big enough to fit between them. I got halfway through before having to quit. Story 22. The first 10 years or so out of college, I worked in the music industry, much of it at a small rap studio that had worked on just a few national-level projects. Some of the CD release parties were straight-up hedonism. Story 23. People who leave their car running overnight for it to be comfortably warm in the morning sicken me. People with outdoor decks featuring heated floors who leave them on during the winter also trouble me. I just cannot fathom the abuse and waste of resources. I believe a gold-plated Lamborghini is less extravagant than those behaviors. Story 24. I ate at 11 Madison Park with my family years ago. It was the most decadent experience I have ever had. The food was amazing. Story 25. I filmed a fundraiser auction for a ballet company. It was a $1,000 plate buy-in. Someone paid $100,000 for a spaghetti dinner with the ballet director. Story 26. Not sure this counts, but my wife and I were invited by some friends to the Genentech Christmas party in San Francisco in 2004. In addition to the company providing us with a hotel stay, it was generally a pretty opulent affair. The performers included Elton John, Mary J. Blige, and Matchbox 20. Story 27. Combining 100 hits of mescaline with 2 8-balls of cocaine and 1 joint of phencyclidine, and ingesting all of it with 2 other friends in the summer of 1985 on the first weekend of summer break. We washed it down with a gallon of vodka and were extremely inebriated for that entire weekend. Story 28. Not my story, but I remember reading about a Reddit user who worked for a wealthy family. They witnessed the family using a $10,000 bottle of wine in soup. Story 29. I went to a really fancy wedding for a wealthy couple, who are relatives of some in-laws. There was a live orchestra, a horse-drawn carriage, and lots of decorations. It was truly nice. I spoke just one sentence to the newlyweds, wishing them a happy life together. Story 30. I once saw a billionaire rent out an entire private island for a weekend just to host a dinner party for a handful of friends. Private chefs, imported ice sculptures, fireworks, and a live orchestra just for one night. It was pure excess in the most surreal way. Story 31. I was at a destination wedding where they had a buffet on the beach, and a falconer with 2 falcons was protecting the buffet from the seagulls. Story 32. I saw a man and his girlfriend both order appetizers and drinks and tip at a restaurant. It was truly incredible. Story 33. I once attended a convention where 2 teenagers in cosplay were making out in public, while another teenager was photographing them. As for me, the most decadent thing I have done is splitting a tiramisu mint for 4 people with my daughter. Otherwise, it is merely existing as a bisexual, according to someone further up this thread. Story 34. I once went to a party in high school in one of the fancy island neighborhoods on the bay in Miami. There were 3 giant homes on the property, each with their own pool and theme. My favorite was styled as a Roman bath, adorned with statues flanking each side, with columns and ornate arches. Oh, and Mark Anthony was staying on a large yacht just out back. It was jaw-dropping being a broke public school kid. Story 35. Growing up, my friend had a bar mitzvah. He was a normal kid with the nickname Nutsack. You would never know it, other than the fact that he always had the newest Nintendo console, whatever it was called on the day it came out. I was a poor kid, and the $30 radio that was better than anything I had ever owned was what my mom and I bought for him. I figured he would be thrilled. There were Hershey chocolate candy bars with his face and name molded into the chocolate, and the wrapper was custom printed. Thousands and thousands of them. He received hundreds of checks handed to him, and he just accepted them with a thanks and not even a smile. Immediately following this event, the next Monday, he had a girlfriend whom he invited from school to the party. Story 36. In Los Angeles, at a strip club during lunch hour, an elderly man enters with 3 bodyguards, each carrying a large trash bag filled with money. They clear everyone off the top rail, leaving just the elderly man and the bodyguards. The DJ plays some music by Pink Floyd, and all of the dancers get on stage. The 3 men toss handfuls of cash onto the stage for about 10 to 15 minutes until the bags are empty. They drop the bags, gather the elderly man, and then leave. Story 37. I got invited to the 1999 America Online Employee Christmas Party in New York City, and they had Aerosmith perform. Aerosmith got paid $1 million for the show, which was a lot of money in 1999. Story 38. Ex-girlfriend's employer bought 9 McLaren cars within a short period of time. This was a fraction of his car collection. Properties were a whole different thing. Story 39. My friends just sent out their baby shower registry. They both work in technology, and my entire apartment could fit in their foyer. There is a baby sling on the registry that costs 430 United States dollars. Story 40. Not the most decadent thing here by a long shot, but last year I saw the 2 girls at the table next to us order a bottle of cider each for 14 Australian dollars. Each took a small sip, paid their bill, and left. There was nothing wrong with the cider as we were drinking the same, and it was a common brand that everybody knows. When the staff came to clean up, they weren't speaking English, but I could see one of them pick up a bottle and say something about it to the other, who pointed out the second bottle. Story 41. Tie between the 10-bedroom mansion with a 20-car garage and an 8-bedroom servant's mansion, which of course had a breathtaking view, an elevator, and a built-in exercise room, and the 20-bed, 23-bath compound with 4 hot tubs, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, a home theater, an exercise room, balsa wood flooring, and a smart mansion. Aspen is on a different level. Story 42. In 1993, Michael Jackson postponed a concert in Singapore for health reasons for a couple of days. Friends from Europe were there with us, but they couldn't stay. They did not sell us their tickets. They took them home with them to Europe as a keepsake. Well, we got tickets anyway, and those people are not friends. Story 43. A friend of mine had a 500-foot-long lazy river installed in his backyard. His rationale was, I am not a strong swimmer, but I do like floating. We live in Canada. In all the years I have known him, I haven't seen him make a full lap. Story 44. I bought new AirPods Pro because mine ran out of battery, and I was overwhelmed by the noise of the city. It was the best purchase ever, but it feels horrible to say. Story 45. Saturday afternoon in a shopping mall. A man stopped in front of the Burger King. He proceeded to drop his pants and defecate right there. My kiosk, where I worked, was only a few feet away. People stopped and stared, followed by a collective "you" from shoppers and workers. Story 46. That weird video going around the internet, where someone serves a chicken inside of some sort of bladder or skin balloon, makes it look like it has just been steamed. Story 47. The family across the street from me threw insanely lavish Christmas parties every year. Real snow that was delivered, real reindeer and Santa in the sleigh, an artist who would paint your portrait, a whole suckling pig complete with an apple in its mouth, an entire room full of custom-made desserts, a hot chocolate bar, a wine bar. One year, there was even a station where you could dip your hand in wax and take the sculpture home. This was an annual event. My family and I still talk about those parties. Story 48. For a second date, a guy flew me to Los Angeles to see the Rolling Stones' Steel Wheels concert. I live in Oklahoma. We spent 2 days in Los Angeles, and he bought me some new clothes too. Story 49. A guy I grew up with had a father who donated a building to help him get into law school. He dropped out after a year to become a part-time ski instructor. Story 50. My roommate used to make a bacon cheeseburger that used glazed donuts for buns. He was basically trying to make it as ridiculous as possible and one time added onion rings and a fried egg too. This thing must have had like 2,000 calories, including ample calories from simple sugars and saturated fats along with nearly zero fiber. Story 51. A friend of mine who is very wealthy married the daughter of a billionaire and literally threw a $1 million wedding. Story 52. A society I believed in that voted for a person who tried to destroy the very principles that society is based on. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.